Spoiler alert. Oppenheimer, starring Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, and Rami Malek, and a shit ton of other people, takes place during World War II, where General Leslie Groves appoints physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer to work on the top-secret Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer and a team of scientists spend years developing and designing the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer was, without a doubt, my most anticipated movie coming into 2023, as Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors working today, and he did not disappoint whatsoever. There's a reason why every single actor and actress wants to work with him, and this cast is so incredibly loaded. Rami Malek, who won Best Actor back in, I believe it was 2018, just has a few lines in this movie because it's so apparent that every single actor and actress wants to work with Nolan because he's just that good of a director. And let's get into the great parts about this movie. Robert Downey Jr., I think, is a shoo-in to at least get nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He was insanely good in this movie. You'd think after spending over a decade playing Iron Man and cashing in hundreds of millions of dollars in checks that he just kind of exists now and only show up for a paycheck every now and again. But he delivered an absolutely insane performance. He's only in the movie for maybe 15 to 20 minutes of actual screen time, but it feels like he's always there at some point or another. And that's another part I like about this movie, is how fast it goes. It's a 3-hour long movie, but it feels like you're there for, like, you've watched 11 hours worth of stuff in a very good way. Very fast, and you get a lot of stuff covered, and you don't really feel like you're missing too much of the movie. Moving further down the list of my positives about this movie, Cillian Murphy is insanely good as Robert Oppenheimer. You forget that he's playing a character. You just think of him as Oppenheimer. I got completely lost in this movie. I was not thinking about anything else, and I felt like I was in the theater for hours. I felt like I was there for years just watching the story unfold, and I loved every single second of it. And again, it feels long, but in a very, very, very good way. I was not uncomfortable. I never wanted to leave. I went and saw Barbie right after this, and during that, I've done multiple double features and watched 2 movies in one day. Watching both of those movies back to back is the easiest thing that I have ever done. The other times that I've done double features, it's taken a toll on me, at least to some extent, but I felt completely fine, and it's 2:18 in the morning right now, and I'm just now wrapping up reviewing both of these movies. I think Christopher Nolan is going to, again, bare minimum, get at least nominated for Best Director. Just how this movie was edited, how it was put together, how it was shot, how everything was just done was beautiful. Like, every single technical aspect of this movie is great. Every single actor in this movie is great. Everything about this movie is so just almost perfect. Matt Damon was really funny in this movie. Got to see a side of him that you don't see too often. He was quippy as usual. He was just a great presence to have. He didn't show up until, I would assume, about 30 minutes to an hour in the movie, but it felt like he was there for most of the time. Again, I had absolutely no clue what time it was, because it felt like 30 minutes just flew by in a second while you're watching this movie. It's just a blast. No pun intended, but actually completely intended. And then my favorite part of this movie was Emily Blunt. I'm kind of disappointed. I wish that this movie was like 4 or 4.5 hours long, because I guarantee you there's so much stuff of her on the cutting room floor that we just didn't get to see, and she was amazing. There's this one specific scene where she's getting cross-examined, and she completely annihilates this guy while he's questioning her about being a communist. And it's the only time during this entire hearing that the prosecution is like, oh shit, we kind of just got. And it's because of Emily Blunt, and she's amazing in this movie. And then I was able to see it in IMAX, and the music, it was great. As most Christopher Nolan movies have amazing scores. I'm not 100% sure if Hans Zimmer did this score. I'll have to look after the fact. But the entire movie was really loud. I've heard conflicting reports on Nolan, or on people in the theaters, saying that it was too loud and you couldn't hear the audio or the dialogue. And I've heard other people say that it was completely fine. For me, it was mostly fine. There was maybe like 2 or 3 scenes where I didn't catch what somebody was saying, but I don't think that was at the fault of Nolan or the theater. It might have just been me not being able to hear. And then the actual blast of the atomic bomb was one of my favorite scenes that I have probably ever watched. It was a very that scene alone was perfect, and the build up and the tension. I would love to see what Christopher Nolan would do directing a horror movie if he's able to build this much tension just to test drop a nuclear bomb, because it was amazing. I'm a really, really, really big history nerd, and there's a lot of things in this movie that are very historically accurate, and just little tidbits. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what happened at that. And just for them to mention it, and for it to be really intertwined, and it doesn't really take away from any of the other events that happened during World War II. And it does a really good job of putting you in a spot where you know what else is going on, and it gives you a really, really, really good timeline of the events. Now let's get into some of the problems that I have with this movie, which is not many at all. For me, like I said, it moves really fast. So the first 15 to 30 minutes, the first 15 minutes, it's going to take you a little bit of getting into, because it just jumps and jumps and jumps all over the place, all over the timeline. So it takes you a little bit to get established into the movie, but once you're there, it's such a good ride. And then you take a little break after the detonation of the bomb, and it really feels like the movie split in 2 parts, which I don't necessarily mind, but the second part of the movie, it takes, like, after the detonation, it takes a bit of getting into as well. It's another 15 or so minutes where you just kind of have to, like, mentally reset yourself and be like, all right, we're back here. And I think that it does a fine job, because those 15 minutes, it really does slow it down and lets you just be like, okay, I just witnessed that. Let's wrap the rest of the story up and figure out where the conclusion is. And spoiler alert again, they dropped the bomb on Japan. The other thing that I really did, like, my biggest issue with this movie was Florence Pugh wasn't the greatest. I get that she was 100% necessary, and I bet that there was a lot with her character on the cutting room floor. I don't necessarily think that her performance was bad. I just think that her character it just didn't add that much to the entire complexity of the story. There's a sex scene between her and Oppenheimer, and he says his little, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds, and it's just kind of like, we didn't really need that because there was no significance to it. It's just that's what people know Oppenheimer for, that saying. And then so that line really wasn't needed because they had it at another point later on in the movie where it did make sense. So having it be brought up first there, it's a minor nitpick, but it was just a eye roll moment for me. And then there was a few scenes after the detonation of the bomb during that 15 minutes that I talked about where you kind of have to mentally reset yourself, where it did over dramatize some things, like minor spoiler, he envisioned himself walking through people that were just bodies of ash, and he stepped into a skull that was ash. So, while he was walking away after giving a speech, and I'm like, okay, it didn't really fit. It didn't really happen too many other times, so it just didn't work. But those are all three really, really minor nitpicks. If I'm rating this out of 5, I'm giving it a 4.75, 4.8, really just because of Florence Pugh's character not really adding too much to the story. Again, I get that she was necessary. I honestly wish that we got more of her and Emily Blunt to flesh out both of them, because I enjoyed watching Emily Blunt in particular so much. And again, those 15 minutes at the start of the movie and after the blast are just kind of but you have to go see this movie in the theaters on the biggest screen that you possibly can. I will 100% be seeing it again. My rating for it might even increase, and I could just get over my little nitpicks that I have about it. But Robert Downey Jr. is going to get nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Cillian Murphy should get nominated for Best Actor, and Christopher Nolan better get nominated for Best Director. And so far, this is without a doubt my most favorite movie of the year. So with all that being said, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about Oppenheimer, and make sure to follow me on Letterbox and Twitter down in the description below, and we'll see you in the next movie review.